All right, welcome back to this week's edition of the Rock and Roll Ghost podcast. This week we have noted chef Jenner Tomaska. He currently runs Esme.
Yep.
Yep, I should have asked you that one too. In Lincoln Park, and it's a tasting menu restaurant that combines the food with art. And it's been a big splash since you opened last year. Um, just how are things going?
Great. Very thankful to open when we did. We kind of caught the tail end of COVID. And couldn't be happier. We've had such a tremendous amount of support from the hospitality community, other chefs. And I had a bit of a following from my time at Next. They did season ticket holders, so I got very familiar with the people that were dining often. And they've continued to support here. So very, very thankful for where we are as a business.
Yeah. Well, let me just start by asking questions about Esme. Where did this inspiration come from for this style of a restaurant? Not so much the food, because you're experienced
Sure.
in tasting menus and finer dining, but the idea of the art. Where does that passion come from?
So my wife and I both own Esme, and
Yes,
run the
Katrina.
place together. Yeah. So we very much so complement one another. And a lot of her passions have clearly laid out, influenced what we're doing. But as I mentioned, we were kind of coming up with this concept or idea during COVID. At a scary moment, you kind of think like, I'm going to open a tasting menu that costs a good chunk of change to come dine here, and the world is basically going to shit. And there wasn't really light at the end of the tunnel, and we didn't know where the hospitality world was at that point. So we really kind of reimagined why we were doing this and wanted to make sure we had purpose. And not really having a home base where we could help support people during that was I think one of the driving factors of why we've kind of tailored to what we're doing here. But I spent a lot of time with Erick Williams and Michael Cornick at MK and then at Virtue, and those familia aspects of helping and uplifting people have very much so impacted my career. My wife worked there as well, worked directly for Michael for some time as well. So a lot of their that moral compass has stuck with us and kind of impacted why we do things here. So Esme, we rotate the menu quarterly. We install a new artist every 4 months, and the food's obviously cooked to that. But we really wanted the space to be a platform for people, a jumping off point, a spotlight for creatives within the industry and outside of the industry. A place where we felt like someone should be highlighted and didn't have a voice to. I feel like being a chef, there's a threshold for progress. You can become the executive chef, and then what's beyond that, besides like a corporate job. So we really took that to heart during COVID, and that very much so dictated how we operate here and what our real goals are here. My wife does have a background in marketing and media and a minor in art. And that's very much what's influenced the art side of things. Excuse me.
No, it's no problem.
And, I felt like that connection that we get with our artists is really what drives me creatively, to have a conversation and sit down with someone and figure out how they get from A to B. That's comforting. That is also very, impactful in my creative process. I don't think I'm the most outspoken and loud person, and to have someone else be a part of that story that we're trying to share,
Right.
I think people really love.
Okay. How difficult was it to get, the investment or the funds together to start this up? I mean, did you have people to rely on that were interested in start helping you start this up?
Yes and no. It was difficult. I feel like that side of business is something that I've learned to love. I think I've fallen in and out of love with food several times throughout my career.
Understandable.
And, you know, I feel like that's why the art is so important here, because it's become a new passion and it's allowed me to connect with people. And I feel like that's what hospitality should be. But as far as the investment side of things, I think doing business and putting together this puzzle of, you know, a restaurant has been fun. You know, from the outsider looking in, you know, Esme does look like a fancy restaurant. But the investment was actually quite small comparatively to some other places around town.
Right.
You know, we raised just over $1 million to open this place, and there wasn't a restaurant here prior to that, and that's pretty small on the other tasting menus, other, you know, Michelin starred restaurants around the city and around the country. But we have had some support through my cooking career, people that have wanted to kind of see me succeed and you know, push me forward. You know, support from other chefs that kind of have connected me and helped that process. But it was very, very intimidating doing it the first time, you know, as a first time business owner and wants to be an entrepreneur, you know, especially during COVID, when there was this uncertainty and we're asking people for money and, you know, but they say, you know, you don't buy the stocks when they're, you know, in the green, you buy them when they're in the red. And so we were able to, you know, leverage a lot of materials and cost of goods and construction and contractor fees and things like that because of COVID. I feel like people were just in a place where we were able to really keep the costs down in the space. And it becomes successful because of that.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned about falling out of love with cooking. Was it falling out of love with cooking itself, or was it necessarily a disconnect with you know, like you were maybe feeling creative in those times?
I think it's more so I relate cooking to sports. I was very competitive growing up. So the act of cooking is always for me very tactile, right? You know, you need to be agile and have you know, fast movement, fast reflexes. Very, very relatable to sports, right? And it's a team sport, right? You have to come together with a group of people and synchronize and dance, right? You know, the last dance, as they, you know, the Bulls documentary, right?
Right.
It's not that I've fallen out with the act of it. I think I've fallen in and out of love with food. You know, what defines delicious, what people think delicious means. Is there like the perfect carrot, you know, or can a carrot be, is a heirloom carrot that much more delicious than a commodity carrot? Just this idea of what people think delicious is and what I think it is. I think I've had, you know, a bit of frustration and lack of inspiration sometimes because we are in the Midwest and the produce here is a bit lackluster. I know there's some other chefs around the city that would say differently, but our window for product here is pretty small. Like, you know, you get a strawberry here and it's really a strawberry that tastes like a California strawberry grown in a, you know, 3 or 4 month period. Here you only get that same product for about 2 or 3 weeks, right? So there's that aspect of it. But you know, I've been doing this since I was 14. You know, I've only worked in restaurants. I've only worked with food, you know, whether it would be Dairy Queen or the local bar or food running or bussing tables or washing dishes. So this is really all I know. But the act of creating things has never kind of slipped my mind. But I feel like purpose is kind of, you know, reinvigorates you and continues down this path. Which, you know, why I'm still doing it.
Gotcha. And I would imagine that creativity is helped a lot by the art that's chosen. Is that correct?
100%. To sit down with someone, you know, and find out what their background is, who they are, where they're from, and why they create what they create, is relatable. It's a very relatable human trait, right? And I think that's very fun to latch on and tell someone's other story on the plate. Whether it's, you know, the physical medium of what their art is or what type of tool they're using. To me, it's all relatable to food. How you're taking something and turning it into something else. You know, it could be, and it's not necessarily art or strictly art. just any craftsmanship, or writing, or what you do, and how and why you pick who you talk to and what you're passionate about. All these are the things that we're trying to embody here. And for me, that's usually our starting point when it comes to the menu.
Okay. Well, and then, how much I guess input does your team directly below you, and then who on your team, I guess, is part of that, creation of a menu?
One thing I did learn at my time at Next, we every Sunday we would have, every Sunday, once a month Sunday, Dave Beran would have all of the cooks, sous chefs, etc., whoever, basically put together an idea. I think we took it from Noma, because they would do a similar concept, but everyone would put up an idea,
right?
And it didn't have to be a finished dish. It could have been a vinegar, or it could have been a ferment, or it could have been 2 flavor profiles. And sometimes it was higher up the ladder you go, you got more of a finalized product or an idea or concept. But there, in my opinion, there isn't this savant. There isn't just the famous chef. It's always the sums are greater than the one, right? And it's very much so a collaborative effort here. We do have a fantastic team, from head to toe, and it's not just me. I'm very good at pushing people to excel at what their strengths are. I'm very good at talking someone into pushing not their boundaries, but past the limits of what they think they're capable of, and letting them lean into that and shine. So our sous chefs, and even some of the cooks have so much impact and influence on the menu. And then even to the artists, we want to show them first here in the space, and they don't have necessarily direct impact on the food. Sometimes they do. But if they are creating us something to serve food off of, or how something's going to be perceived or color, we most certainly take that into consideration here. There's always some parameters as far as service goes. And I don't think food looks great on things that are blue, and size, and being able to actually maneuver it out of the kitchen and onto the table, or always take into consideration. But we always want to make sure that whoever we're highlighting is getting to express themselves the way they want to.
Gotcha. Well, no, that's very cool. And I've talked to plenty of chefs over the years that have said, like you do, that it's not just them, and it's the myth of the 21st century, really, with the rise of the chef, where it was Ferran and people, and Renee and stuff like that. People just kind of elevated them to like godlike status.
Sure.
When they, I mean, for sure, they had their people, helping out.
There's that family tree that I don't know if it was Lucky Peach did it in their magazine, or who did it, but there was like the pedigree of people that have come out of these places and have gone on to do great things. And you look at, through Thomas Keller and Alinea, and you go over to Noma and El Bulli and all these other places in Cellar and Roca, and see the actual like talent that has come out and worked during like the heyday of them being on the top. It's quite impressive. And that's something that we want to push here. I have no intentions of being the executive chef at Esme indefinitely. It would make me nothing happier than to have Gustavo, who is rapidly climbing the ranks and doing a fantastic job, be the chef here and get the recognition that he deserves. That I think is where my true passions lie. The hospitality world can be a bit competitive at nature, and I just don't see it that way.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because you kind of came up in this era, and now that I don't know if it was the pandemic or if it was happening before, but there was kind of like a leveling out of that kind of attitude, not just the old the locker room, boys locker room feel and all that, but it was just everything was kind of deflated in terms of putting chefs on a certain pedestal. And I feel like things are starting to maybe even out where we're understanding more and more. But in all honesty, on an international scale, people really never thought much about, who does their food and
Sure.
what their living conditions are, and
Sure.
all that stuff. And it's like, it's like anything, people need time to kind of, learn and grow with what everybody already knew was happening in in the food world.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you. I've read that you were from the south suburbs. Where did you grow up?
Orland Park.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, so it's about 45 minutes to an hour out of the city.
Yeah.
I've got family still down in, Tinley and Oak Brook and Lombard area.
Yeah. I grew up in Blue Island.
Okay. My both of my parents grew up in Blue Island.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah. Eisenhower.
Yep.
They went to high school.
Yeah. Everybody in my family. Well, my brother and sister did too. But yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, most certainly a South Side suburb boy.
Yeah, there's not many chefs I've known that are from the South Side. Like, I think Poley is about the only one, I think, besides you, that I can remember meeting that's from the South suburbs.
Yeah, I think Joe Flam is too.
Oh, right, Flam, right. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about Joe. Yeah. He lives not far from where I grew up. So
yeah.
That's an interesting. You bring up Joe. I've never seen you do any cooking competition or cooking show. That's something that doesn't appeal to you.
At a time it did. I was on Iron Chef once.
Okay.
It was a kind of a spin-off. You had to compete against another chef, and then you got to go up against one of the Iron Chefs.
Okay.
I unfortunately didn't win.
Oh.
At this point in my career, I don't feel like it would do anything for me personally. I at times feel like I hold the craft too serious to I think appreciate it what it's done to its full extent. It's put cooking on the map, right? It's made it popular, and I'm grateful for that. But the idea of going to a gas station and creating a dish in 30 minutes and representing myself the way I do, I want to represent myself and express myself.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
But I think Chef's Table did a fantastic job of I think how I love the craft and how they wanted to show people doing what they've been doing their entire life. The reality TV is not necessarily
no. I get it. You seem a little lower key than most people that and then for them it's fine. I mean, I watch the stuff, so I'm not complaining. Either. But yeah, not everybody is meant for certain things, I suppose. And you said you've been working in some form of the hospitality industry since you were 14, but on from what I've been able to find on your resume, it's pretty much been MK and Next. Were you ever at any other I guess mid-level fine dining institutions before then?
I spent some time at True prior to MK.
Okay. Wow. That really goes back.
Yeah, this was right out of college. They didn't want to pay me, and I wanted to move to the city.
Yeah.
So I was out on the East Coast for school. Johnson and Wales is a culinary school. I really wanted to go get the college experience, I guess, rather than the culinary degree. I had been working in restaurants, and I felt like that was just the next thing to do in life as someone who's 18 or 19 and doesn't really know what is taking it seriously, right?
That's generally how where a lot of people come from.
Yes. I don't think I would change a thing. I've been fortunate enough to pay off my student loans because the school was quite expensive. It's not what I don't think I'd be recommending it and saying this is what you have to do. I feel like there's so many other paths, especially if you know that you want to cook. And I feel like, if you're passionate about food, and there's options from school, but it's not a necessity. I think you could travel the world and go work at places and there's a lot of different outlets to get the same information. And then I would recommend going to business school if you want to be a business owner or work at a corporate restaurant and understand a P&L, which those culinary schools do offer, but I don't feel like, you know, I related to like, you don't learn to butcher a chicken by butchering, you know, 6 in meat class one time in a 2-year stint, right? It's repetition and butchering cases of chicken and being able to, you know, get those everyday movements and over repetition down.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, I was at school on the East Coast, and then I spent some time in South Carolina. And then I moved back up to kind of get my stuff out of Providence. And I was kind of at this crossing the road. I had been working for a corporate company called McCormick and Schmick. They had just sold, I think, to Darden at the tail end of it. So it was a decent a restaurant when I was younger, and it got very corporate. You know, they were buying things that were pre-prepared. Is before it was like they were getting decent fish in from, you know, from the harbor, and it was a simple fish house. Like, you know, they were cooking lobsters every day and breading fish and cooking a la menu. They were making butter sauces, and it rapidly changed. And I kind of had this crossing the road. It's like, well, we want you to be a manager and continue growing here and move to New Jersey. But I felt at that time that I hadn't learned enough about cooking to go down this path. And I wanted to pursue higher cooking, whatever I thought that was at the moment. So that brought me back to Chicago, and that brought me back home. And at the time there was no Instagram. There was no, you know, Twitter. You would just go look at someone's website and
a simpler time.
Yeah, and basically see a menu and show up at the back door and say, you know, you were inspired to work here, or you'd go buy their cookbook. And I think I'm 37. I'll be 38 in September, and I think my age gap is probably the last that got to experience that in the industry.
Yeah.
And you know, some of the places that were really doing well at the time were, as I mentioned, True, and then MK. And, you know, Paul Kahn had Blackbird, and there was some other great restaurants. And I walked in the back door at MK, and it stuck. So I'm very, very grateful for my time there.
Yeah, people really forget, especially God in Chicago. I mean, it was almost 20 years ago, whatever, was a whole different landscape. I mean, most of the most of the area that holds restaurants weren't even there. There was no really no West Loop.
No.
You know, Fulton Market was still a meat packing place.
Yeah. When I started at Next, they were still spraying the blood off the streets from the deliveries in the morning, and it was just full of semis. There was no late night bars, or it's almost like Disney World now.
Yeah, and that's even more, you know, recent. I remember going to Moto and them coming out every time if you needed to get a cab. They had the flashlights and everything, because everything was all like messed up with the stairs and the roads, and you don't know what was going to happen at that time of night in Fulton Market either.
I think that Moto was like my first tasting menu.
Yeah. I miss Omar.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I don't want to keep you very much longer, but I do want to ask, I mean, with regards to Next, well, no, before I get to Next, MK, you talked about Michael Cornick and Eric, but Eric is somebody that's continued to be a mentor to you, correct?
Yeah, he's a great friend of mine. He married my wife and I.
Wow.
You know, yeah. He's been in our life for a long time now. And you know, I think he is someone that I most certainly look up to. Beyond being a chef and just being a great person. You know, when I decided to leave MK as I think I was 23, and you know, I felt like I had reached my there was nothing else I could learn. That's how I felt. Whether that be true or not, I think that's false.
Yeah.
But I gave him that message, and I probably didn't give him to him in the most, excuse me, eloquent way as
Right.
someone who was young and immature. And rather than him saying, "This kid's worked here for a couple of years. What an arrogant, what a short-sighted thing to say to someone who probably felt like I had still the world to learn," right? Rather than taking that in and brushing me off and saying good luck, he did the opposite, and something I'm forever grateful for. Dave Beran, who also worked at MK under Erick, went on to also work at True, and then made his way up to being the chef at Alinea, and then they opened Next, and he basically called Dave and got me a job, and pushed me towards that, rather than saying, good luck, kid. You have no idea. So yeah, that was kind of the passing of the torch, and checking up with me on Sundays, and we'd go get a beer after a 16-hour shift and let me complain and vent. And he's always been in my corner rooting me on.
Yeah, and oddly enough, Erick was just on Top Chef Wisconsin last night. I was like very surprised to see him there, but it was very cool. I fortunately I haven't been to Esme, but I haven't even been to Virtue, which I really need to do. Every time I have the ability to go to Virtue, like, I can't find a table. So it's like it really needs some, because I mean Virtue is white hot now. I mean, it's really helping put Hyde Park on the map.
Yes. So I had left Next, and he was in the processing of opening Virtue. And it's a story, but I'll tell it anyway.
Let's go.
He was about a week before opening, or a couple of weeks before opening, and basically his staff had up and left, the back of house staff, which happens with a new opening. And he called me, and I said, I got you. Just like he had gotten me for the last however many years. And I was there for almost a year, and allowed him to go through those growing pains of being not just the chef, but the owner, and dealing with, like, you couldn't or didn't know what to do on a daily basis. And being able to watch someone go through that was amazing for me, because I got to get a up close and personal perspective of what I was about to embark with opening Esme. And have watched someone go through problems and situations. I was just that much more prepared to do it when we did this.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Now at Next, you started at what year?
Shit, I'm so bad with years. So I started their opening year. Whatever their year was.
I can't remember either. There's been too many damn restaurants at this point.
And I was there for about 10 years.
That's a long time. And you started pretty much. You started at, what was it, Departe or Tornado?
Yeah, I was a commis in the basement. And I worked my way up to CDP, and then sous chef, and then CDC, and then the executive chef. So that place was so special. I had staged at Alinea. They offered me a job, and I had staged at Next. And what made me pick Next was obviously Dave, and his influence that he took from his time at MK. While it was intense, and they were trying to, reach its highest pinnacle and take it very seriously, there was still something familiar, and there was friendships in the kitchen. There was team, it felt like a team, right? And it felt like they all had the same mission, of producing the best they could. And I wanted to be on the best team. That's what kept me there for so long.
And you were also, I mean, a part of something that was in a lot of ways revolutionary, especially in Chicago, but I mean,
100%.
I would say globally too. How much you worked as a stage at Alinea, and obviously you worked a very long time at Next. What was the difference in terms of working at either? I mean, like, you know, which one was there a noticeable difference because
in my
Dave was
opinion,
controlling the kitchen mostly?
yeah. I don't want to use the word sterile. But the team was so large at Alinea. It was so intimidating. You know, I'm sure anyone who walks that place is intimidated. Even when I was the chef at Next, going over there was intimidating. It was just a little different. The standards weren't any different. You know, because Dave came from Alinea, and Grant spent a decent time sporadically throughout venue changes and things like that. But there was just, I think, a little more of Dave's personality stuck in that from the same roots that I connected with.
Yeah. Describe, because I've never actually meeten Dave, so describe his personality actually.
I mean, he's a big guy. He's a big quirky guy. He's very smart and intelligent. And he has this well of knowledge. So to be someone like that sounding board, was, you know, it's something that's going to stick with me forever. To go, you know, listen to him talk about food. Like, I didn't know what the hell Mugaritz was. You know, and he had been there, right?
Yeah.
And he had eaten there and cooked with these chefs. And to come up with an idea or ask him about something, and he could fucking reference the page number and the idea. Like, you want to make hot ice cream? Moto's been doing that for a while now, Jenner. Or an edible rock. Go open up Mugaritz and see how they're doing it. Just or the idea of constructing a dish or an idea and reverse engineering why you cook something, I think is something that's stuck with me. I recall him telling a story about reverse engineering, you know, chocolate mousse, because he was trying to understand the idea of why you cook things in the order you did, and what ingredients and flavors did to each other. And to have that and listen to that and be able to be someone's sounding board, it's what really, I think, you know, pushed my cooking, and pushed my knowledge of being a chef.
Yeah.
He's a big sports guy too, and he's competitive at nature, and I love that too. So.
Yeah, every photo I ever saw of him, he looked extremely unemotional, extremely serious. So I was like, I wanted to get a better idea of
I feel like unfortunately the cliche photos of every chef with the arms crossed, is I think all of our awkwardness screaming. But because if you get us on a phone call like this, or after, you know, a high life, or in your own field where there's no pressure, I feel like most of us are quite different.
Yeah. Have you been able to go to check out his restaurant in LA?
I have not.
Okay.
A lot of my friends have gone out to work with him at different times, and, you know, still close with a couple of his business partners. I have a 3-year-old at home, so we don't
No,
travel
I
much.
get it. No, I get it. Like,
unfortunately,
that on top of that, you've got a business to run.
Yeah.
But, yeah. You know, and it's funny you talk about reverse engineering, and it just sounds like to be the type of person that would take apart a stereo system to put it back together to see how it actually works. And it's a certain level of curiosity and intelligence and honest, not arrogance, but bravado that makes someone think that they could do, you know, put something, you know, back together and somehow maybe even make it better. Of course, you get a lot of crackpot people ended up, you know, blowing up the stereo, but
well, my motto is you can't do it right until you know how to do it wrong.
I think that's exactly it. Yeah. You know, okay, so I'm gonna ask you just a couple of softball things now.
Sure.
When you are able to eat somewhere in the city, where would you go, you and your wife?
So we did a dinner last night for Embark. It's a charity that raises money to basically create these creative experiences for inner city kids, kind of breaking boundaries by providing out of the box creative learning experiences. We're going to host them here.
Okay.
One of the first places they hosted was at MK. It was like the first white tablecloth restaurant that these kids got to go to and experience something different and be accepted, right? And where the people looked like them that were serving them, or didn't, but were made to feel like they belonged.
Gotcha.
So we invited some chefs from around the city, and that this is my answer. So what I have got like 4 go-to places. So we talked about Virtue. So obviously that's a no-brainer. Zach Engel from Galit. It's in Lincoln Park as well.
Okay.
And he has probably the best hummus in the city and across the country in PETA. That's phenomenal. Jason Hamill over at Lula Cafe.
Yeah.
Their brunch is killer. They've been around for like that was like that's flagship Chicago. Jason Hamill is the Chicago name in my opinion. Sarah Grutenberg from Monteverde was here, and then someone a little newer and younger like myself, Christian Hunter over at Atelier.
Yeah, you have a connection to that spot because one summer you took over.
Yeah. Elena at the time was called Elizabeth, and then she kind of passed the torch on to Christian and their front of house operator and partner. But she had a thing up in Michigan that she was hosting these dinner parties, and the restaurant was still needed to be ran, and basically handed me the keys to the castle and said, "Here's some parameters. Do whatever you want." And I find that I don't know if I'd ever be able to do that, but it was very humbling that she trusted me, and it was fantastic. We had a great summer.
Yeah, that's a really cool spot. I was able to eat at Elizabeth in the early days, and it's really weird to go past a tire shop and a comic book store and then go into this tiny little area to have a fine dining experience. Are there any places that are gone that you miss?
Blackbird is a no-brainer. What else? I felt like they're like, I could be wrong, but I feel like a lot of the places that were special to me thankfully survived the kind of COVID era.
Yeah. Well, Blackbird's interesting because it's still sitting there. Nobody's done anything to it, so they must still own that.
I'm not sure what how it's structured with the landlord. I would assume they own that building, or if they don't, I don't know.
There's got to be some reason for keeping it looking like it's still
or the landlord didn't want to do any work to it because
that's true.
There might not be any reason to.
But my kind of back of the brain wish is that like they just say, "Bam, it's opening up again,"
Yeah.
But who knows? All right. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure to get out there?
I don't know. No. I think just that we're trying to break the the traditional mold of the fine dining scene. If you can see the restaurants, obviously, I love your backdrop.
Well, that was one of the other problems too. I was having trouble getting onto the Dropbox set of photos, and I grabbed something from Facebook last minute. The restaurant's very bright. From the aesthetic to what the quote unquote fine dining restaurant looks like, right? Where we're trying to do not the complete opposite, but change the landscape, right? We want people to come in here and feel like they're welcome. That I feel like art and fine dining gets this rap for pretentiousness. Something that I can't stand, and I feel like you don't have to be educated or learned on art or food to enjoy. You can have a feeling or enjoy or not enjoy, and that's not right or wrong. And I feel like art and food have so much of that in common, and that's what we're trying to express here. No, that's absolutely very cool. All right. Well, Jenner, I hope to be in sometime.
Please.
Congratulations on the success. And you were just it was just announced that you're going to be at Chicago Gourmet.
Yeah. Yep. Lots of fun things this summer. The
Yeah.
Beard
Well,
Awards are here. We're gonna
yeah.
have a good summer.
Oh yeah, that's right. And you got the beer nomination. How did I
Yeah.
forget that? He's nominated for
Yes.
great best chef Great Lakes.
Yeah.
For God's sake, how did I forget that?
Yeah, it's okay. I'm just
Congratulations.
there's a long list that I think of people that deserve it.
Yeah.
Prior to myself, but I'm just thankful.
Well,
It.
if you win it, take it all in. Just
Yeah.
to embrace it. Because obviously, if you win it, you deserved it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jenner. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Have a good shift tonight.
Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.